Good afternoon, Archdale friends, young adults group, and all of our affiliates and subordinates. We appreciate your weekly attendance and tuning into these things. While we'll continue to do these broadcasts, these podcasts of mine, we're also going to start something next week. We're going to start meeting face to face again next week at 6 o'clock on Thursday. So if you can make it, I hope you all can. I look forward to seeing each one of you. But we'll continue these podcasts because they're fun and hopefully we can reach a different audience. We're going to be looking at Psalms 23. And we're continuing this look into parallelism. And you can probably be thinking, good Lord, are they not done with parallelism yet? It's a broad topic, and a lot of ancient authors, a lot of ancient poets used this parallelism, this poetic mechanism, used it a lot. They also used a lot of different forms, and we'll look at each one, but we're going to continue this look into parallelism in Psalms 23. So with me saying that, we're going to kick this off to Pop over in Robbins, North Carolina, who is ready to take over. All right, you ready?
Sure.
Let's go.
So today you see we're looking at the 23rd Psalm. And just a few thoughts. This is a type of synthetic parallelism, which means this. The second line builds up the first. And so, as everyone listening is familiar, I'm sure familiar, here's an example. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. The second line builds up the first. The second line kind of modifies the first. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley, the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you're with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. All of that, every bit of it is parallelism. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. I don't know how many funerals I've attended when this psalm was read. And the thought I had today was, this is really not a psalm about dying. It's a psalm about living, celebrating life. And I would have supposed that the reason you hear about it in so many funerals today is he talks about walking through the valley of the shadow of death and not fearing evil. But it's not about dying. It's just about not being afraid of death. And so I just think it is a tremendous testimony to someone who's all about God. And it's not that he thinks God's all about him. He refers to himself, I don't know how many times. I used to know, I counted them once. But I think there's 105 words in the poem, and 103 are about the first two, the Lord. Every word after that modifies the Lord. It all builds up as what he's saying about God. So I think it's a psalm that uses parallelism to celebrate the confidence he has in his God. David. Well, what say you?
I agree with you 100% when you say the word confidence. And the reason is this. What does David take confidence in? And he kind of says this. In verse 4, it says, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. The Hebrew word for staff or rod is shavit. And it's just a utensil, a tool rather, that shepherds use, and they use it to count sheep. They used it to pull sheep away from cliff edges because sheep are stupid. They used it for all sorts of things in protection of sheep and in keeping their flock. So what David is saying is David gets security, he gets confidence in God because God is his protector.
Okay.
That's again, this is David. I don't know if he did it on purpose. You could say it's the Holy Spirit leading him, perhaps. But this thread of confidence, David gets confidence in God. I look into the hills. Where did my help come from? My help comes from
the Lord.
The Lord. This line of this theme of confidence from God is all throughout the Davidic canon, all throughout the Davidic corpus, rather. So if you look in, again, next week we'll look at Psalms 91. Same kind of thing. God is David's source of comfort when things are going wonky, when things are not working out the way they should. And this whole line, even when I go through the darkest valley, or even when I go, or the old school version, King James version is, lo, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. So this whole, David would say, no matter where I go, no matter what I do. And David had some dark times. He had a son try to kill him. He had Saul try to kill him for years. He had issues with women. His wives give him a hard time. He has some dark valleys. But the constant, what David is saying throughout all this, or at least what I think he means, is that his one constant is God.
Well, I was thinking about the children's Bible story you read about. David and Goliath. What did he say? Who is this uncircumcised Philistine?
Exactly. He
come to me with spears and a sword, but I come to you in the name of the Lord. But he was confident, not in his ability, but he was confident in the ability of God, that this uncircumcised Philistine was defying the armies of the living God. And he believed that God would do the right thing. God would vindicate himself. And I had a young college kid once. We were talking late one night in church at a college meeting I had in Traverse City. And his name is Steve Crow. He's a mathematician today, brilliant kid. He said this. He said, Cam, God is capable of defending himself. I never forgot that. He is adequate. He is capable. So that's what David's confident in.
Exactly. And then here's what kills me about David, Pop. Because you don't see this. I've never met this characteristic in anybody else, except maybe Wayne Wingfield had this. And he never takes credit for anything he does. He's always giving glory to God. You referenced the children's story, David and Goliath, and I'd say that while it's been turned into a children's story, it weren't one. But I'll say this: throughout all of it, David says to Saul, to King Saul, says it several times. He says, "God handed over to me the lion. He handed over to me the bear. He'll hand over to me this uncircumcised Philistine."
Exactly.
He never said, he could have said, and would have been true to a certain extent. He could have said, "I killed a lion. I killed a bear. I'll kill this giant. He'll be like one of them." He could have said that, and it still would have been true. But he never takes credit for it, and you could almost say that his humility serves him up until he meets another woman. Up until Bathsheba. And then his pride gets him a little bit. But I would argue that Bathsheba did that on purpose. She knew what she was doing when she was bathing. She knew David's habits, and she knew his routine, and she knew when to be naked and where to be naked. And if you look in the first part of 1 Kings, when David's dying, Bathsheba and Nathan take advantage of that for their own purposes. And so Bathsheba is definitely, I wouldn't call her conniving, but she definitely knows how to get what she wants.
Yeah. So he leads me a path of righteousness for his name's sake. So I've thought about this. It's called the Shepherd's Psalm. It's a celebration of God's presence, of God's provision. It's a celebration of God's power. But it also is a celebration of this. I mean, he testifies that God leads him in paths of righteousness.
His name says.
And I thought about this last night. I don't know if you listened to my Facebook feed last night, but what does that mean for us to be led in the paths of righteousness? Well, righteousness means being right. We're right with God. That's righteous, but it means that we do the right thing. So the right thing happening is high on God's radar. Righteousness is high on God's radar.
Well, yeah, he says in Jeremiah 9:26, he says, do not let the one who boasts in wealth boast in his wealth, and do not let the one who is strong boast in his strength, but let the one, if anybody boasts, let him boast in this, that he knows me, that I delight in justice and righteousness and mercy, and in these things I take pleasure. So, God is not, he's not hidden what makes him happy. He's over and over and over. What makes God happy? Doing the right thing, being the righteous person.
So then, if you bring that to where we live today, I mean, America is more polarized now than I've ever seen it, and I didn't think that was possible. More polarized than I've ever seen it. So what is the right thing today? We have seen a virus come out of Asia. Once again, this happened several times throughout history. It followed the trade routes in the Dark Ages and in the Middle Ages. And a virus killed, or a plague killed half the population in Europe. Took them 200 years to recover. It's happened a couple of times since then. Now it's happened again. And people's dying all over the place. We've had 100,000, infections?
100,000 infections.
In America, I forget how many deaths. I had those numbers.
Less than 5, yeah. Less than 5,000.
And here you go. So, and then you got the riots. I don't mean protesters, but I'm talking about riots, and those in the know say it's going to be in the billions of dollars to fix this.
The riots?
You've got the media going crazy. Now you've got politicians leveraging a crisis for political gain in capital. So my question is this. What is the right thing? And I thought about that last night. And, the 23rd Psalm is a poem. Well, the Iliad and the Odyssey is a poem.
Sure.
And I've told you before, poets always bring a response. Always, every time, without exception. You may not agree with their response they bring, but they will bring one. And so when you read the Odyssey, of course, about Odysseus coming home from war, he addresses something. I'm going to read that for you. 1 second. Telemachus, his son, was left behind. His father was at war, the Trojan War, for years, and then it took him years to get home after the war. And he was asked, "Are you the son of Odysseus?" And Telemachus says, "I'll try to give you a frank answer." He says, "Mother has always told me I am his son. It's true." Then he says, "Would to God I've been the son of a happy man, whom old age overtook in the midst of his possessions. Now think of the most unlikely mortal you've ever born. You ask me, yes, I am his son." And then there's another line on a little further in that book, in that poem, where you read something to this effect, that Homer wrote about the fatherless man having no one to defend him. And no one comes to the defense of the fatherless son. And so, that was social justice. If you know the story, Odysseus is gone, and his goods are being ransacked, his wife's being taken advantage of, and Telemachus stands to lose all of his father's inheritance because no one comes to defend a fatherless son. That's social justice. If you read Walt Whitman during the Civil War, in his poem, I Sat Looking Out, that poem, Walt Whitman lays it out, man, that he says looks out the window at social injustice, at people, at murders, at slavery, at evil things done, and then Walt Whitman said this: I sit, I look out, and I'm silent. What's he talking about? He's talking about social justice. I mean, it goes on and on and on. We don't have enough time to go through all of them. I got a ton up here on my desk that I spoke about last night. And so here's the thing. The poets have always brought a response towards social lack of justice, but the 23rd Psalm is a psalm that reaches across all the ages. It reaches across every age.
Right.
And I believe that where we're living now, with all the chaos and the confusion that we're walking through right now, a lot of these people are angry and they don't know why. And I think for a lot of them that are so angry and rioting, it's because they're calling it a lack of social justice in their life. And my question is this: in the church, what do we do with it? What's the right thing to do? Lock them up and throw away the key?
What?
The National Guard to them? And what do you do? What's the right thing? I'll throw that back at you.
That's a good question. What's the right thing to do? You don't hear a lot of pastors speaking about this. Well, let me rephrase it. You don't hear a lot of white Southern pastors speaking about this subject. And the reason you don't hear a lot of white Southern pastors speaking about the subject is because a lot of them might lose their position, their jobs if they do. But I'm pretty secure in my position, so I'll say this. I was listening to Caleb this morning, and I heard a black pastor preach on one of my favorite parables, the Good Samaritan. And he talks about how the Good Samaritan did what was right, even though the other side, the Jew that he was helping, hated him, didn't trust him, hated him, thought he was a bad person. So basically, he's calling us. He's asking white people to stand up and help, to stand up and speak out, to stand up and use your privilege. And I say that knowing a lot of white people hate that word now, but use your. Let's change that word. You and Dad, let's change it. We're going to change it for society. We're going to do people a favor. We're going to say this. Well, let's not call it white privilege. Let's call it influence, because that's what it is. Influence. White people have influence. They are, for some reason, trusted and let off the hook by other white people, especially white people in authority. So, how do we use our influence? You ask what's the right thing to do. The right thing to do is use your influence to stand up for the voiceless. And I'll use this illustration from my personal life. It's probably an illustration I probably wouldn't preach on, because it was a pretty good chance to get a lot of folks upset. But I was at Walmart a couple years ago, about I don't know, 6-7 months after Trump came into office, and the whole Hispanic immigrant, Latino immigrant thing was big. It was real big. Undocumented workers, undocumented immigrant. I won't say illegal immigrant, because I don't think people are illegal. But the whole, especially in the South, the whole air was real tense around Hispanics. So there was this lady I met at Walmart in line. She was behind me. She had a full cart, and she had 3 kids, and she didn't speak much English. And she was actually 2 people behind me. Between us, there was a white guy, country boy. You could tell he had a farmer tan, and he mowed yards for a living. And he had the name of his company on his shirt. And he was annoyed at her, and he was talking disrespectful to her. And I thought, you know what? This is what America's coming to, that we have to pick on folks because they don't speak English, or because they don't look like us, or because they're not from here. So I let her in front of me, which meant I let her in front of that guy, that jerk. And he started yelling and screaming and getting upset, and he finally just walked off. But in that instance, I had the opportunity. I could either speak up for somebody who quite literally couldn't speak for herself because she wasn't very fluent in English, or I could ignore it mind my own business, and get out of the store. And I think if we as white Americans no longer stand silent or stand comfortable being silent, I think equality will come to the whole world a lot quicker.
Well, I think that, I've never liked the word white privilege. It used to provoke me. I didn't understand it, and I still don't. But a friend of mine opened my eyes a little bit this week. He said this on a Facebook page. He said, if you've ever been pulled over by a police officer and he asks you to do something, you ask him why. He said, if you were not given a ticket, it's probably because you're a white man, because most black people would have been cited.
Or, shot.
And when I heard that, man, I thought, my goodness. And I'm not proud of this, but Brandon, I've been pulled over by a whole lot of police officers. And my wife knows it, and my family knows it, and my friends know it, that I have been pulled over many times. And there's 3 or 4 of those times, by legal definition, I should have gone to
jail. Yeah.
One of those was in Traverse City.
Yeah.
You're with me when that happened. I mean, I ran a 4-way stop because I was talking to you and not paying attention. And a car started to pull out, and I blew my horn, and this guy stopped short before I hit him, and I yelled at him.
Ran into him.
And then I learned it was a cop.
And the cop just said, there was a stop sign back there, and let you keep going.
And he kept going and left me alone, whereas if I'd have been, in Traverse City, there were probably 2 black people in the whole town.
Right.
But if I'd have been a black guy, he'd have probably pulled me.
Or, shot you.
Or something.
Yeah.
And so, by that definition, that example, I had to admit, I have been a recipient of, I've been privileged. And I didn't even know it. I really didn't know it. So I believe for me, this week something's happened in my life is I've become more aware.
There you go.
I've become more aware. And for me, someone would say, isn't that a long stretch in the 23rd Psalm? Actually, it's not, because if God leads us in paths of righteousness, well, sometimes He brings a course correction in our lives.
Sure.
We're going in a direction, He turns us another way.
With that rod, with the rod of correction. Sometimes a shepherd, if a sheep's going the wrong way or going to run off a cliff, a shepherd will, and I've seen videos, a shepherd will whack him, and the sheep will alter course and go the right way. And
it's the course correction.
Yeah.
And I think that I've experienced something like that this week. Somewhat of a course correction. Now, I got some people in my church here, right? They wouldn't understand that.
No. They think you turned liberal.
They would. But what's happened is I've experienced, my eyes have been open, I've become more aware, and at least when I hear those words now, I see it in a different light, and I believe that speaks toward a direction and healing for this crazy time that we're in. I don't support rioting and this destruction, and I don't support any of that. But I see a point of view I never understood before. And that the 23rd Psalm helped me with that. And Aeschylus wrote before Plato was born, and Bobby Kennedy quoted Aeschylus when Martin Luther King was shot. And Indiana didn't riot and burn that night, and Detroit did. And a lot of people believe because Bobby Kennedy empathized, and he said this, my brother too was shot by a white man. My favorite poem is Aeschylus, who wrote, in our sleep, pain which cannot forget falls drop by drop upon the heart until our own despair. Against our will comes wisdom to the awful grace of God. Bobby Kennedy empathized with minorities that night, black people, and he stood with them because his brother too was assassinated. And they didn't burn that city that night.
Aeschylus also speaks in another poem. He talks about words, about pain that is too deep for words to express.
Yeah, so see, the poets always bring a response to tragedy and to injustice. And there it is in the 23rd Psalm. I believe we're finding it there. And it's a psalm that, when Aeschylus said God, and I say God, it's probably not the same God.
No.
But the principle's the same.
Well, there's truth in it. And wherever there's truth, the God of Israel is there.
Yes, so that's kind of been my awareness for this week, and that's sort of how the 23rd Psalm spoke to me this week. And I'll leave that with you.
So here's this. The same lines, the 23rd Psalm, paths of righteousness. One of the first, I'm ashamed to admit this. When this happened, and that dude stood on that guy's neck and slowly suffocated him, and America erupted. The main thought that went through my mind is, how do I let people know I'm one of the good whites? How do I let people know that I'm not prejudiced, that I'm one of the good white people? And then the Lord spoke to me in my heart, and He told me this. He says, this isn't about you. And I think that in America, white people have been used to things being about them for a long time. And this isn't about us. This is about hate and ugliness and prejudice, but really what it's about a whole group of people that have never had the same rights that I was given the minute I was born.
Yeah.
And if we just admit that, yeah, that means that we're going to have to make some alterations. It means we're going to have to take a good look at ourselves. It means that we're going to have to be honest with who we are as people. But it means equality for a good chunk of America. And so, where do we go from here? How do we move forward? How do we go along the path of righteousness? How do we... Go ahead.
That's the deep question. Not easily answered. Begins with prayer. Only God can do that. Only God can make it happen. But it begins with you, people, with us being aware, at least where they're coming from, and not trying to legitimize riotous behavior and distraction. But at least understand that these people are angry for a reason. Now, some of it is politically motivated. It might be a lot of it is. But there's a lot of ignorance. And people are driven by ignorant behavior. And at least empathizing, like foot washing, with someone that's different than we are.
You know what? There's a picture that's going around Instagram and social media. I'm glad I saw it before I took myself off of social media. But it's Mr. Rogers. And Mr. Rogers, if you know Mr. Rogers, he was the most quiet revolutionary ever. He didn't get loud. He didn't break things. He didn't draw attention to himself, but he changed the world. And one of the ways he did that was he was one of the first people in the history of televised cinema to hire a black man as the main character on a show. And we all know who that was. It was the mailman. His mailman was an African-American man. And there's a picture, it was off camera, they didn't televise this, but he's washing his feet. They both have their shoes off, and they're both in a big pool, kiddie-sized pool of water, and he's washing the man's feet, and they're both just laughing and giggling.
Yeah.
I think this, Dad, I think the main way to go forward is this. We have to apologize. And white people we're not used to having to apologize, especially apologize for something we don't think is our fault. But I think if you're white, and even if you've never ever stood by while prejudices happen or racism happened, or you weren't a racist yourself or discriminated against anybody yourself personally, even if you were able to live that kind of life, which I think you and I have. We've never discriminated. We've never stood idly by and watched somebody be discriminated. But I think as a white man, a lot of black people have been hurt by somebody that looks a lot like me.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that if I apologize, not for something that I did, but on behalf of my race, I think that could bring healing to a lot of people.
Well, I've seen that in a church service happen before. It was in Evan. It was powerful. I'm telling you, it was a powerful thing to watch. I was set back by it. But anyway, I just don't think we can live in where we're at right now today. Read through the 23rd Psalm and not at least address for passive righteousness what is the right thing to do right now. And the only thing we can do is, I believe, be aware, look at it through a different lens, and not be tolerant of the behavior of the riots and the destruction, but at least be aware that there are some people that don't look like us. They've not received the same grace, and they're angry about it. And here's the go. The politicians have been leveraging racism forever.
Long time.
In a big way, in a big way in the 60s, the politicians began leveraging a class warfare. And it's not fixed anything. It's only gotten worse. And anything that politically comes out of Washington, it's not going to fix the problem. If it could have fixed the problem, it would have fixed the problem. So the only way to address it moving forward, healing can only come through the church. And that's a big step. And the church has to be consciously aware of it. And take steps. You got to start somewhere.
There you go. Well, Pop, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. I appreciate your time. And can you believe it's already been over half an hour?
Yeah, it's about fast.
Time flies when you and I get together, friend. I love you, and I'll give you a call later.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, folks, I'm not going to leave it here because I think it would be impotent of me to talk about what needs to happen without me doing it. So I want to say this on behalf of my race to anybody that's ever been discriminated against, hurt, or wounded by somebody that looks an awful lot like me. I'm sorry. And that was wrong. And that shouldn't have happened. But we're going to get through this together. And I believe there's going to come a time very short among us when my children, maybe David's children, will see a time when a man or a woman is judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Friends, I love you, each one of you. You are not alone. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.